Welcome to Red Tit Stories. What's something that a friend classmate did in high school that was seen as funny at the time, but you now realize was actually not okay? Had a kid in my year who'd had a surgery that left a nerve bundle in his neck exposed. If pressed it would paralyze him. From memory it was for spina bifida, and for some ungodly reason he told everyone. Certain boys took great pleasure in going downstairs behind him and pressing it, which completely paralyzed him for a few seconds and he'd fall like a brick. Usually onto whoever was in front of him. So dangerous. There were a fair few teeth knocked out because of this, his and other people's. It happened so much that in his third year the school installed an elevator and you had to have a special key to use it. He got the only permanent issue key at that time. Kids are assholes. In the 6th grade, I had a friend who was a troublemaker and a class clown. I've always hated going to my math class because my teacher was a cranky old lady who'd yell at you for the smallest things. Me being an 11-year-old, I actually had the worst anxiety just knowing I could be the next person yelled at in front of the class. The one thing that helped get through the year was that friend, cause I knew he'd always make jokes and have me almost in tears cause they were that funny. One day, when my teacher walked out to use the bathroom, that friend went over to her desk, picked up the mug she was drinking out of, and spat out the biggest loogie into it. We all saw it and just waited for her to come back. 10 minutes later, as she was just normally teaching, she picks up her mug and chugs it down. Everybody just starts laughing and giggling, including me, but nobody said anything when she questioned it. It was horrible, but I wasn't about to be the kid who snitched. Later on during the school year, I guess we had a day where it didn't start at the normal 7:30 a.m. but instead 10:30 a.m., but I didn't know, so I showed up really early. A bunch of kids didn't get the memo, so we were all just placed in the cafeteria until school actually started. Around 9-ish, my math teacher noticed I was sitting out in the cold and invited me to her class where it was warm. When I got there, she let me work on my missed homework and even let me eat breakfast in her class. She asked me about home life, school life, if I had any friends, etc. She made me feel welcome. She then told me about her life, about her only son, about her husband who passed away from cancer 20 years back. She was very sweet. This was like back in 2008, and I think she was like 70 years old. I don't even know if she's still alive after all these years. But I wish I could go back and stop my friend from doing what he did. Pantsing somebody in front of everybody. Is that even allowed anymore? That was so commonplace as a kid, and also wearing a mirror on your shoes to look up skirts. Even teachers thought it was funny that students occasionally did that. Few messed up kids in my primary school lit a teacher's car on fire, just because she gave one of them failing grade on midterm. It wasn't one of the mean teachers, she was mostly nice to students. Cops got involved but don't think they got punished accordingly. I know one of them was in and out of juvie already, and were all around 13 to 14 years old, one was even in Nazi shit. I know later on those kids got all tangled in dealing and robberies, probably all went to jail at some point. Living in the Netherlands. Classmate was showing on his phone a whole online shop he claimed to have with all kinds of drugs and weapons. We thought it was funny because we didn't take it too serious. He dropped out of school early and turned out to be a big drug dealer. Well, we could have known, I guess. In our school there was a teacher who had a mole, so of course the kids decided her nickname would now be Mole. She must have felt really hurt, as she eventually had the mole removed, leaving a little dent where it used to be. Did everyone then stop calling her names? Nope. They started calling her Hole instead. This was in elementary. My dad bought a brand new bike for me and I rode it to the park, and these older kids came up to me and asked if one of them could take it for a test drive. I said okay, and about 10 seconds in, I see the guy riding my bike being pushed off and my bike being stolen right in front of me. The older kids helped me look for my stolen bike, but growing up I realized that they plotted this whole thing, and yeah, I basically gave my brand new bike away. This actually happened to me. A group of 3 kids that used to be my friends invited me to come hang out with them at the lake. I had kind of been outcast from the group because I wasn't cool enough or whatever, so I was eager to get together with them. When I got there, they had apparently stolen all of my school books out of my locker and threw them all in the lake right in front of me. They laughed hysterically and just left without saying a word. The next day, when I went to confront them about it at school, one of them had collected a Ziploc bag full of all 3 of their clipped fingernails and toenails and threw them in my face. Some got in my mouth, some got in my eyes, some got in my ear. I broke down crying and gagging. Nobody faced any consequences other than me because I pushed the kid away from me and he fell into a teacher carrying coffee. I was suspended for 2 days and had to pay for all the books that they destroyed because I had no proof that they were the ones that did it. I didn't do well in school and had anger problems, so the teachers assumed that I was the one who did it and tried to blame the other kids. School is fucking rough, man. A friend in my group had sex with another friend's mother, like literally. His mother was even somewhat open about it. We always gave both friends shit for it and thought it was hilarious at the time, but we were only about 16 or so. Had a classmate come in every so often with a bruise or small cut on her face or arm, but she was part of the punk scene, so I chalked it up to maybe hopping into mosh pits, although I had never heard her mention going to shows. At one point during our junior year of high school, she spoke to a few people sitting close, myself included, about going through the emancipation process of separating from her parents and living with a friend. It was also around this time that I noticed the bruises weren't occurring anymore. It took me a full 5 years to figure that one out. It's been a full 18 years since the incidents and she's doing much better. There was one kid in a group 3 years ahead of me in a religious school. He was super volatile and it made him easy to pick on. I used to laugh at the jokes and his reaction too, although I did a couple times tell him they only do that because of his reaction. He would flip the fuck out, scream and cry. Turned out he was being raped and sodomized by the youth group leader regularly. No wonder the kid had issues. I feel so bad for him now. OMG, there was someone in my grade in my religious school that was like that too. He was super sweet, but if you pushed the right buttons, he'd explode. Sometimes the guys would pick on him just to make him react, and I always felt sad because he would cry afterwards. He was a big guy though, so it was scary for me, a female, to intervene. I did once because he started to go off on his little sister like that, but man was my fight or flight telling me to get the hell out of there. I had this teacher whose breath was horrible. Like someone literally took a crap in her mouth. Horrible. Anyway, this one kid left a big bottle of mouthwash on her desk when she wasn't looking one day. The whole class was laughing. Then she turned around and saw it, and you could see her kind of die inside. She went on to tearfully explain to the class how she had some kind of an intestinal issue that she has been suffering with and that she realizes her breath is bad. Then she excused herself from the class for the remainder of the period. Now as a kid, I thought that was hilarious until she started to cry. And how she was able to continue teaching us monsters after that is not something I will ever understand. And if that had been my wife or mother, would have encouraged her to quit. A kid took another kid's towel after gym class shower. He used the other kid's towel to dry his ass. Put a shit stain on the towel 3 foot long. Lots of nervous laughter because we were glad it wasn't our towel. Sick bastard. This kid's used to smell girl's seat right after she leaves. Once he smelled something funny and asked the other guys to smell get seat. This girl was called Poop because of this guy. What a weird fetish. This brought back a repressed memory. For around 6 months, whenever anyone farted, all the boys in my class would literally run over and sniff as hard as they can and then rate it out of 10. Teenagers are fucking strange. Chewed his cold sore open and started finger painting on his desk in his own blood. High school honors psychology class, front row next to me. A classmate got a new cool bike. For some reason this other classmate wasn't okay with this, so he threw her new bike in the woods and smeared dog's shit all over it. He was pretty much found out for doing this the very next day. Kids just are the worst people on earth. Jesus. My very promiscuous friend casually told me that she and her cousin had sex when she was little. I was too young to understand what that really meant until I was older and realized that he'd probably been molesting/raping her as a toddler. He was still a kid, too, maybe the same age difference as your story. She ended up ODing on fentanyl in an abandoned row house a couple years ago. One of my childhood friends, who was also very promiscuous, told a group of us that her sister's 18-year-old boyfriend would have sex with her when she was 6. She was bragging about it and we were all insanely jealous. We were like 12 or 13. We were so naive, we had no idea what it really meant. Now as an adult, I think about it and makes me sick to my stomach. She was clearly crying out for help. Class clown masturbated in the middle of class. Hand down his sweatpants, going at it while the teacher's back was turned. Everyone knew what was going on because he wanted to be noticed. People giggling and shying away from the spectacle. He finished in a piece of paper and threw it in the teacher's trash can at her desk. Teacher never knew. Edit, a little backstory and to clear some things up. The guy was well known for doing crazy stuff. Think Jackass. This was in 9th or 10th grade back in 01 or 02. Most of the class thought it was funny and the rest didn't care too much. Different times. He was seated dead center of the classroom, so literally the center of attention. Everything happened in his sweatpants, so there was no nudity. He stared at the girl next to him the entire time because he had asked her out and she turned him down. She thought it was funny and a tad creepy but otherwise okay with it. Lastly, I don't keep up with the guy, but he had a brother, and last I heard, which was several years ago, one of them died in a car accident. I think it was our guy. Had a kid in my school do this too. He would come on the underside of the desk. Everyone knew not to sit at that desk. He was actually expelled and the teachers found stalactites of jizz on the underside of the desk from months of this gross shit happening. There was a guy in my high school who was kind of a douchebag, call him Rodney. One day he pissed off the wrong dude, still not sure who, so the guy went into the locker room and pissed in Rodney's locker and then took a shit and stuffed Rodney's car keys into it. I laughed at the time, but looking back it was a bit much, lol. I never thought it was funny, but a lot of classmates did. There was this one kid that would make fun of a weird girl for both of her parents dying in a car accident. Lots of people laughed and I still think about it 16 years later. In the 5th grade, we had a random urinal and sink shitter. This kid would shit in the sinks and urinals in a couple of the boys' bathrooms for a few weeks. It got so bad that the staff/teachers had to take kids in groups at pre-designated times to go use the bathrooms, while they waited outside. The kid was in my class, and got caught, because he was in my class and decided to shit in a urinal while in this group setting. He laughed hysterically the whole time, and thought we would all think it was funny. I mean, we did think it was funny, but it was annoying we had to go in groups. He got suspended for a bit because of that, and then those incidents never happened again. Senior year of high school, we had a guy who trashed all of the boys' bathrooms. Thousands of dollars in damage. Everyone knew who it was, but they couldn't pin it on him. Instead, they just locked every boy's bathroom except the one next to the office. Most people couldn't use the bathroom more than once a day because of that dick. There was a girl in my HS grade that would suck anyone's dick from our grade. Just ask her at lunch, and she'll blow you in your car after school. Not even a big deal for anyone. She wasn't very popular with the other girls. Obviously this girl had some fucked up shit going on and no one stopped to think about it. Reminds me of a girl I went to high school with. She would constantly brag about how she lost her virginity at 14 in a gangbang with 4 30-year-olds. Everyone made fun of her for being weird without stopping to think how fucked up that was. Putting a used condom on the lecturer's desk, with a threatening note on the side. It was funny for the people involved, but everyone else was disgusted. The lecturer was naturally freaked out and refused to teach that class again. One of my classmates jammed his thumb up another student's butthole in 3rd grade. Happened at my school too. Except it was 7th grade and it was the wrestling coach doing it to a student. They were in a deadlock and the coach poked him in the butt to get him to react and used that opportunity to pin the kid. And we all laughed. I had a teacher, our class tutor, who was lovely, but she was tired of several of our classmates acting like little shits. One day, during our home tutor class with her, several of them just kept messing about, picking on her and full-on blanking her when she spoke to them, acting as if she wasn't there. They found it hilarious. Me and my friends were quite close with her, so we stayed after that class and asked if she was okay. She looked at us and just started crying, saying how she's so tired of it, and how they make her not enjoy teaching anymore, and she'd been teaching over 20 years. The next day we actually told the class about it, and their faces dropped. I think for once they realized how far they had pushed her. I felt so bad for her. Freshman year of high school, someone left a shaving razor in the locker of a girl who had a light mustache. Can't imagine that helped her self-esteem at all. This actually happened to my art teacher in high school. She was probably in her 60s and had some noticeable hair above her lip. For her birthday someone bought a pack of those cheap razors and wrapped it up. She looked like she was going to cry as half the class laughed. Guys in my year went through a phase of brutally wedging each other with the aim to fully rip the underwear off. Once guys' ripped boxers got pinned on the notice board complete with skid marks and bloodstains. Seemed hilarious at the time, but I die inside a little at the memory. We had a gauze pit in our school, which was a pit in the ground with steps leading down, that had no clear function. So the culture in the school would be to grasp someone's backpack and throw it down the pit. Once the kid went to get the bag, someone would shout, "Gauze pit." Everyone would run over and spit on the kid continuously until he managed to get up the stairs. I remember even teachers laughing at this. 90s were a strange time. Almost all the harmless fun I can remember from my school is actually horrific. Pussy punching. I had a friend who was a big girl who loved to tease me because I was much smaller. I thought she was one of my closest friends, but she only ever repeatedly would punch me right on the bone down there really hard every time. It was terrible. We had a friend that was always asking for a bite of your food or a drink of your drink. So, I bought syrup of ipecac, causes projectile vomiting, generally used for poison control, and poured it in a can of soda. And when he asked for a sip, I told him he could finish it. He ended up vomiting on the subway for an hour trying to get home. One of my regrets in life. 888 We had a teacher in middle school that served in a war. I can't remember which war, but he saw some combat and it had affected him. Some of our more asshole classmates thought it was hilarious to bring snaps to school. Like the ones you get on the 4th of July that look like a fat sperm and you throw down on the ground to make a snapping sound. Every time that poor man turned around, they would start throwing those snaps because sometimes, not always, but sometimes he would go nearly full-blown flashback and hide, nearly crying under his desk from enemy fire. Some of our classmates, including the ones who did it, thought it was hilarious and no one would stand up to them cause those kids were the real, white trash, country bumpkin sort of terrors that would seriously hurt you if you crossed them. The principal didn't really do anything about it other than urging the teacher to retire. My class bullied a emotionally frail teacher into retirement, too, shortly after he had returned from having a breakdown. One time several students sneaked into his classroom and superglued all the items on his desk to the surface: pens, erasers, books, coffee cup, etc. They even fanned the pages of the books while dripping glue into them to seal all the pages together. This many years later, my only remaining memory was him sitting at his desk calmly talking to students while seeing through the gap under his desk that his feet were rapidly shaking like they were having a seizure. We had a classmate put some of his pubic hair in our TA's water bottle for getting him in trouble. We all laughed while she drank from it, and even harder when she found out. As an adult, I'm mortified at the thought. Was painful to watch. Edit, because PPL keep asking, this was in North Dakota back in the 90s. And I would guess he served in Vietnam, but he just referred to it as the war on the few occasions he actually spoke about anything. That's it for this time. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories.